Hi, my name is Joshua Weaver. I'm the Director of Innovation and the Director of the Texas Opportunity and Justice Incubator at the State Bar of Texas. And today we're talking about some emerging new trends in artificial intelligence and technology as a whole. Something we've been watching over the past year is the rise of audio as a primary interface for working with computers and technology. Now, I will be very transparent. I was super skeptical about this trend, and I thought that this fad would die relatively quickly, but it has gained more and more momentum over the past year. So let's talk about why this is picking up and some practical ways that you can use it in your work life today. The main motivation for using audio as an interface is that if you're an average typer, you might be typing somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe 50 to 70 words per minute. If you are a really fast typer, you might reach speeds of 100, maybe 120 words per minute. And that's really exceptional for most people. On the other hand, the average person can talk in speeds in excess of 180, 200 words per minute, which means that using our voice to communicate our thoughts is always going to be at least 2, sometimes maybe even 3 times faster than typing with our hands. Now, there are some drawbacks to using audio as a primary interface. If you have ever used one of the transcription tools of old, then you have probably had an experience where you start talking and then you fumble on a couple words and you lose your train of thought and you think, oh gosh, no, that's not what I meant. Note to self, edit this out later, right? And then you have to go through that whole process. And if you're not super smooth with it, then you basically have to go back and do a bunch of extra work on top of the dictation in order to smooth that process out. Artificial intelligence has basically solved this problem. So now, as you are using the new generation of dictation tools and audio UI tools, if you do make those mistakes, which you will naturally, the AI will automatically go back and clean those mistakes up for you. You can also give notes to the AI, which is really helpful. So, sometimes I will get partway through a brainstorming thought, and then I will think, nope, scrap that. That's a terrible idea. And I'll just tell the AI, don't include that in the final outline, right? And so, in addition to just cleaning up the dictation, it can actually take those show notes sort of like an assistant and go back and you get a very clean, structured outline at the end of that process. Now, there's several ways that you can use these audio tools to help improve your speed of writing. I think the most useful, productive tool that I've encountered over the last year is a tool called Whisper Typing. And so Whisper Typing is a tool you can install on your computer. You can also put it on your phone and your tablet. I have done all 3. And what it does is it replaces and augments your typing keyboard so that when you press a button, you can say whatever you would be typing, and it will take that down and it will drop that text into the field in whatever application you're using where you would be usually using your fingers to type out your message. Now, the other thing that Whisper Typing does, and this is very awkward at first, but it solves another one of those primary problems with using audio as a UI, is that you can actually, in a physical sense, whisper when you are giving that dictation. This feels very strange the first time you try doing it. My own personal thought was, there is no way that I can whisper to my microphone and it's going to catch all of the things that I want it to catch. And there's no chance that if I whisper at full speed, it's going to be able to keep up with that and capture that. But as it turns out, the technology is really, really solid. And so this solves the privacy problem, the uncomfortable feeling that I think we all tend to get when you are in a public place. You're outside of the privacy of your bedroom and you're trying to talk to an AI, and you don't really want everybody to know what you're talking about or saying. And you don't know if anybody's eavesdropping or maybe it's just plain awkward or silly, whatever it is that you have to say. Whisper Typing allows you to talk really, really quickly, gain all those benefits of the speed of talking, and then also maintain some of that privacy that you would otherwise have. Another great tool that I've been using extensively is a relatively new tool. It's called Granola. Granola was initially created to solve the problem where you join a Zoom call and there's like 10 bots that are there to take AI notes for everybody that's there or even not there. And what Granola does is it just sits in the background. It doesn't have to join the call, and it will take notes and then produce really clear structured outlines from those notes. It could also do follow-up actions like send an email or create a to-do list, you name it. But the other thing that Granola can do is that it can just take regular dictation notes. So I have this installed on my phone, and in addition to using it for meetings, I will use this sort of like an old dicta pen and just ramble my thoughts into it. And one of the amazing things about this is, again, sort of a departure from the old generation, an improvement on that, is that you can just leave this thing running, and as I often do, and as the thoughts come to you, you start rambling those thoughts out loud, whether you're speaking or whispering, and you can let it run for an hour, 2 hours, and you don't have to pause it. You can just stream of consciousness talk to this thing. And when you finally get all the thoughts out, you press end, and it will go and clean all that up and create a really structured, tidy document for you as a result of all that rambling. For somebody like me, it is super, super effective. It allows me to multitask. It allows me to get those thoughts out of my head onto the paper as they come to me. And so I highly recommend checking those two tools out. OpenAI just released a new change for the deep research tool, which may at first seem like a relatively small feature change, but in practice, it makes a huge difference when it comes to how functional and how convenient it is to use the deep research tool. So if you're not familiar, the deep research tool is an incredible resource for attorneys because what it allows you to do is you can put in a detailed question, a detailed prompt. Here's the thing that I want you to think through. Here's the thing I want you to research. It will ask you some follow-up questions, usually 4 or 5 follow-up questions. And then it will go off and perform research for sometimes as long as 20, 40, even as long as an hour before it returns a super detailed memo that has a lot of citations and evidence to back up its conclusions. Now, deep research is not infallible. It can still make mistakes, it can still hallucinate, but in terms of getting the best quality answer that you possibly can from the smartest model that you possibly can use, deep research is the tool. And for most attorneys, we have the time, right? So rather than using the fastest model that will get us an answer in 10 or 15 seconds, it's usually worth waiting the 20 minutes or 45 minutes to get a really thorough, really detailed answer. So what is this change and how does it make deep research better? Essentially, the change allows you to add additional input and context and update the AI during the deep research process. So in the past, when you started the deep research, you might fire off that request and then 10 minutes in, or as you see it going through the list of sources and explaining its reasoning, you might think, oh gosh, that's totally not what I meant. I need you to do something entirely different. And your only option at that point was to either wait until the deep research finished, which could be quite a wait, or open up a new chat and start an entirely new request. Well, now what you can do is you can just, right in the middle of a deep research request, go to the sidebar and type in whatever updates you want to type in, and you can effectively steer the deep research process while it's ongoing. Again, this may not seem like the biggest or most flashy update, but in practice, this is like being able to check in on an associate and say, how's it going? Have you hit any problems? Do you need a little more coaching or advice on how to perform this task? And the result of that is that you get much better answers and you feel like you have a lot more control over the process. So if you haven't tried it yet, I would highly recommend go out and get yourself the best paid subscription that you can to ChatGPT. Turn it to the pro mode if you can. If you can't, just go to the heavy thinking mode. set it to deep research, and then start a request. And partway through that request, try adding some feedback to further steer that request. I think you'll be really pleased to see how much that helps. One of the common big themes of this year in AI is watching people discover that they can do so much more that they would normally think is outside of their skill set by using the AI. So, for example, I am not an interior designer. I have no background in that. I do appreciate a comfortable, cozy, inviting front office, but I wouldn't have the first clue how to design something like that for myself. So one of the things that you could do, it's fun, it's light, it's easy, but it could make a real practical difference for your law firm, is go snap a few pictures of your front office area, then open the Google Gemini app or the ChatGPT app, paste those photos into the chat, and ask the AI to redesign your front office area to make it as welcoming and fresh and cozy and inviting as it can make it. And what you will get back is not going to be just some random front office, but you will actually get back your front office redesigned with perhaps new furniture or some new decorations or some lighting improvements. And essentially, you have this little interior designer in your pocket that can now allow you to take on a project or a task that you might not have the skills or the experience to do otherwise. Another similar use of this is headshots. So I'm certainly guilty of this. I think a lot of people are guilty of this. You get a headshot that you like and you put it on the website and then you keep it for 10 or 15 years, right? I don't want to change it. I'm growing older, don't like it, don't want to bother getting a new headshot. At the same time, we know that the best practice is you ought to update your headshot every few years or so, right? Okay, this doesn't have to be a big, complicated, or difficult process. You can now just put on the top half of a suit, take a selfie, make sure that you have decent lighting, right? Then you feed that into ChatGPT or Nano Banana with Google, and you say, I need a refresh of my headshot. Here's a selfie. Can you turn this into a headshot for my law firm website? And what you will get back will be something that is, for all of our purposes, identical to your likeness, but it will clean up the background. It may clean up the attire, the framing of the photo, right? All those little things that you might get help with from a professional photographer. But it allows you to do that very quickly on the fly and without all of that skill and expertise that you might otherwise have. Another idea is to use these same tools to freshen up your website or your email signature, right? I was looking at my email signature the other day and it looked like something from 1998, right? No big deal. Same idea. Take a screenshot of that website landing page, take a screenshot of that email signature line, feed that into the AI, use the vision reasoning capabilities and say, hey, take a look at this. Provide me 3 recommendations for how I can make this a little fresher, a little newer, more exciting, right? More visually appealing. Now you have a graphic designer that is helping you improve your aesthetic presence, in your email signature or on your homepage when people are first getting introduced to you online. The bottom line is that if you are curious about using these AI tools, there are lots of little fun, interesting side quests you can go on that will impact your firm in a very positive way. These are things that you would not typically think to do that are now very attainable, very achievable using artificial intelligence, and they're only going to take a few minutes of your day. So I recommend you get creative and give it a try. I can't think of a field that's moving faster than AI. Seems like something new and exciting is happening every new week. We're trying to provide you with a great resource that is constantly updated with brand new, interesting content you can apply practically in your firm today. Once again, I'm Joshua Weaver. If you're enjoying this content, I highly recommend you check out the Texas Bar Practice website where we have published the AI Toolkit. That is a project that we worked on over the last year with the Committee on Emerging Technology and the Trail Task Force. And that website is going to include updates going into this coming year. Also recommend that you like and subscribe on the channel for more content like this.